I love a battery party, but
Yeah.
Hey, this is Warren Redlick. Battery Day is coming really soon, so it's time for Battery Day predictions.
Like our battery should be called nickel graphite because it's mostly nickel and graphite.
We're going to talk about the chemistry that's going on for Battery Day, and more important, in the second part of this video, I'm going to talk about future Tesla models and products that will rely on these different chemistries, how much they're going to cost, what kind of range you're going to see, and other amazing things that are coming. So let's have fun. Get ready.
There's really two main dimensions along which cost optimization and making something available to the mass market can be achieved. One is design iteration, going through multiple versions of something, and then the other is economies of scale. And you kind of need both of those things in order to make a compelling mass market product.
Unlike other companies, Tesla uses different battery chemistries for different applications. So while for a lot of companies they have one battery chemistry they use for whatever vehicles they have and they don't use any other chemistries, Tesla has multiple chemistries for multiple situations. As an example, Tesla has started using iron phosphate batteries in low-end vehicles in China. Tesla also uses nickel cobalt aluminum batteries for most of its vehicles today. It has been reported that Tesla uses nickel manganese cobalt chemistry for its grid storage batteries for Powerwall, Powerpack, and Megapack. I've also read that they use nickel cobalt aluminum for grid storage, but I'm not sure. It could be one or the other. What's coming for Battery Day is an expansion of that chemistry and how they use it in different applications. The first and least obvious and least talked about, but maybe most important, is lithium iron phosphate, LiFePO4 in chemical terms, sometimes known as LFP or iron phosphate batteries. By using iron phosphate batteries, there's a couple of really key advantages. Number one, they don't use nickel. Tesla faces a problem finding nickel. Elon talked about it in one of the quarterly investor calls.
Any mining companies out there, please mine more nickel. Okay. Tesla will give you a giant contract for a long period of time if you mine nickel efficiently and in an environmentally sensitive way. Hopefully this message goes out to all mining companies. Please get nickel.
They need people to mine more nickel because certain of their battery applications require a lot of nickel. Iron phosphate doesn't use any nickel at all. So that's a big advantage, is it frees up nickel to be used in other battery applications.
There's like two general classes of cell. There's like iron phosphate and then the nickel-based. Nickel-based cells have higher energy density, so longer range. Obviously, those are needed for something like the semi, where every unit of mass that you add in battery pack, you have to subtract in cargo. So it's very important to have a mass-efficient and long-range pack for batteries. However, what we're seeing with our passenger vehicles is that our powertrain efficiency and sort of tire efficiency, drag coefficient, like basically all of the things that, our HVAC, going to a heat pump, basically our total vehicle efficiency has gotten good enough with Model 3, for example, that we actually are comfortable having an iron phosphate battery pack in Model 3 in China, and that'll be in volume production later this year. So we think that getting a range that is in the high 200s, basically, but we think you probably get a range of almost 300 miles with an iron phosphate pack, taking into account a whole bunch of powertrain and other vehicle efficiencies. That frees up a lot of capacity for things like the Tesla Semi, other projects that require higher energy density. Yeah, so you have like two supply chains that you can tap into, iron phosphate or nickel. We use very little cobalt in our system already, and that may trend, to zero long. So it's really about nickel.
The second big thing is it's less expensive.
What really matters is decreasing the cost per unit of energy of the battery packs, so you can make the car affordable. That's actually the important thing.
Lithium iron phosphate batteries are down around $60 per kilowatt hour at the cell level. That is a tremendous cost savings compared to the ballpark of $100 a kilowatt hour or more for the nickel-based chemistries. A third advantage is it cycles well. Lithium iron phosphate batteries cycle well, which means they last longer. It means if you have a lithium iron phosphate battery, every time you use the battery, you charge it up and you discharge it, that's a cycle. If it can handle 4,000 cycles, that means it lasts a long time. If it only lasts 2,000 cycles, it doesn't last as long. And everything we've seen about iron phosphate batteries is they cycle well.
You can have an enormous difference in the power density and the energy density and the cycle life between one chemistry and another. They can be really enormously different.
So it's important to understand that lithium iron phosphate and other less expensive battery technologies can be used for grid storage. Energy density is less important. Cost is more important, keeping costs down.
I think that graphite, particularly for the grid storage, where the cost is the absolute cost and cycle life is the absolute judging criteria for the grid storage. Graphite LFP will be, in my opinion, just say again, in my opinion, graphite LFP will be a very promising solution.
Lithium iron phosphate cycles well. That's important for grid storage as well. All the things that matter more for cars aren't really as big of a deal for grid storage.
And for stationary storage, we can basically use a whole bunch of miscellaneous cells out there. So we can just gather cells from multiple suppliers all around the world, and you don't have a homologation issue or a safety issue like you have with cars.
When it comes to vehicles, certain advances are making it more viable to use lithium iron phosphate, as you heard Elon mention. One of the things that he didn't talk about there, but he's talked about in the past, is cell to pack. That currently Tesla vehicles are made with battery modules. In a car, there's cells. The cells are arranged in modules, and the modules are arranged together to make packs. And Elon has talked about going straight from cell to pack, skipping the module stage, which saves weight and allows you to squeeze more batteries into the vehicle and get more effective energy density.
You don't really need modules, in my view. You should just go from cells to pack at this point. The modules in the Model 3 are not actually interchangeable, so there's no point in having modules, really. We should just have a pack.
Lithium iron phosphate is already being used in Model 3 in China. It will probably be used in Model Y in China. As these efficiency improvements spread, we will see them in other vehicles like Model Y. I think we're going to see them in the low-end Cybertruck models, the single motor and maybe the dual motor, because they have a lot more room. Maybe we'll see it in Cybervan and maybe even in some future versions of Model S, Model X, with a lesser range. Right now, Model S has a 400-mile range. Maybe a 350-mile range is enough, and they can do that with lithium iron phosphate and bring the cost of the Model S down to make it more reasonable and bring it down to a new level of competition. The next level up from lithium iron phosphate is NCA, nickel, cobalt, aluminum, the batteries that they're currently using in most Tesla vehicles now. Figuring that the lithium iron phosphate will be in the low-end vehicles, we would see NCA, nickel, cobalt, aluminum in the mid-range vehicles. And I think it's reasonable to expect some improvement in the energy density and cycle life of the NCA batteries. That would fit in the mid-range or longer-range Cybertrucks. We can expect some improvement in the energy density, perhaps to 275 watt-hours per kilogram at the cell level from what's currently 250 watt-hours per kilogram.
The energy density is increasing sort of maybe on the order of like 5-ish% per year. And it doesn't sound like much, but you add that up over a number of years with compound interest, it ends up being quite a significant number.
And I think we can see that cell-to-pack technology deployed for nickel, cobalt, aluminum, which improves the overall energy density at the vehicle level. The next step, and what is probably the most exciting detail about Battery Day, is the advanced battery pack.
The more advanced battery pack.
Tesla has very clearly started a project called Roadrunner at the Fremont location on Cato Road and Page Road. Most people believe this involves a new manufacturing process that takes up less space, probably using Maxwell's dry battery cell technology. It seems very likely that this technique, this advanced battery pack, will use more nickel. That's why Elon was talking about mining more nickel. When you look at nickel, cobalt, aluminum, that uses a very high proportion of nickel. It's very possible that they will increase energy density of the nickel, cobalt, aluminum by increasing the amount of nickel in the battery cells there. We can see the advanced battery pack, my guess, and it's only a guess, is that the advanced battery pack will use a chemistry called NMC811, nickel, manganese, cobalt. It has a higher proportion of nickel in it than the more common NMC532. We've seen this in Jeff Don's research. He's a researcher at a Canadian university who works with Tesla, and he has been researching NMC811. Two of the most critical components of a battery are the cathode and the anode. The nickel is in the cathode, or the iron phosphate is in the cathode, and the graphite, you heard Elon talk about nickel graphite, nickel in the cathode, graphite in the anode. Lithium iron phosphate's different. Okay, so I think there's something I should explain. Two critical components of a battery are the cathode and the anode. The cathode is where the nickel is, or in the case of lithium iron phosphate, it's where the iron phosphate is. The anode is where the graphite is, and in future batteries, we believe silicon and graphite in some mixture, or maybe just silicon down the road. A lot of the research has been about how to improve the cathode so that the cathode can take in more lithium ions, which then translate over to the anode. So you need to improve both the cathode side and the anode side to improve the battery. If you only improve one, you haven't improved both. So there's research on the cathode side about getting more nickel in the cathode, using a higher concentration of nickel in the NMC811 versus NMC532. Nickel, cobalt, aluminum, which Tesla has been using, already has a fairly high amount of nickel, but I think they want to move to a higher nickel formulation if they're going to continue using nickel, cobalt, aluminum. And then on the anode side, they've been using graphite, but they want to add, it appears they're adding silicon. Silicon holds more lithium, but in the process it expands, so there's some technical issues. The limiting factor channel is great at explaining all this stuff better than I possibly could, so I recommend checking out the limiting factor YouTube channel. But it's just important to understand this issue about its cathode, its anode, and there are other features as well. Will the cathode be thicker?
Thick electrodes definitely plays a role. I just mentioned that the lithium content is inside the cathode, right? So people always should remember that's where the beginning of the lithium comes from.
What's the electrolyte that the ions travel between from cathode to anode? There's a lot of different factors that come into play. Something called single crystal materials in the cathode that prevent what's called microcracking, so that the cathode lasts longer to get to that million-mile battery to increase cycle life. Currently, the nickel, cobalt, aluminum batteries that Tesla has been using, made by Panasonic in the Nevada Gigafactory, are achieving about 250 watt-hours per kilogram of energy density. Elon talked about achieving 400 watt-hours per kilogram in about 3 to 4 years from now. Keep in mind that nickel, cobalt, aluminum they've been doing in the Nevada Gigafactory was 250 watt-hours per kilogram maybe 2 years ago. So if you're getting 5% improvement a year, they should be able to achieve more than 250 watt-hours per kilogram on the existing nickel, cobalt, aluminum, or some tweak of the nickel, cobalt, aluminum they're making in Nevada. Panasonic has said they believe they're going to get to 300 watt-hours per kilogram in a couple years. I think it's reasonable to say that they're going to achieve 275 watt-hours per kilogram with nickel, cobalt, aluminum soon, if not already. With Project Roadrunner, with this new advanced battery pack that they've been working on, it seems pretty clear that Elon is talking about achieving 400 watt-hours per kilogram in about 4 years.
So I'm confident that Elon's remark is backed by solid battery research. In 2021, Battery 500 will also deliver 400 watt-hour per kilogram cells.
If you back out 5% a year growth, I predict that at Battery Day, Tesla will announce they've achieved 340 watt-hours per kilogram at manufacturing level, that they're going to start manufacturing that at Project Roadrunner on the pilot lines and move that into main lines. Something to keep in mind is at the beginning of manufacturing is going to be problems. It's going to cost more per battery, and There's going to be something called the yield problem, that when they start manufacturing batteries, they don't get as many good batteries out of it, and they get a lot of bad batteries out of the batch. So maybe they'll only be 50-50 on good batteries versus bad batteries at the very beginning. As they improve their manufacturing process, they increase the yield. They get 75% of the batteries are good batteries. They get 80% of the batteries are good batteries. Hopefully they get to 90 or 95% of the batteries are good batteries. And by increasing the yield, they improve the cost per kilowatt hour, and they overall make everything better. So that's one of the big goals. A lot of other things, how they're going to use Maxwell, how they're going to use high bars technology to improve manufacturing, to shrink the footprint, to improve the speed. All of these things are going together to enable them to make more batteries for less money per kilogram. So between all of that, with cathode improvement, with anode improvement, with electrolyte improvement, with single crystal materials, with silicon graphite in the anode, it's reasonable to expect we're going to see at least 4,000 cycle life in the new batteries. We're going to see another big thing is the charge depth. It's typical when I talk to Tesla owners, they try not to discharge below 20%. They try not to charge up to more than 80%. These improved technologies should enable them to discharge down to 5% and charge up to 95% with confidence that they'll maintain cycle life. And that means you get more effective distance out of your battery. Your range is actually larger than it was. Your practical range is larger by a significant portion. Number one, you've got more range officially, but you've got more practical range because you're able to use more depth of charge. So in the early days, when advanced battery pack is being produced in lower volume, it's going to be higher cost per battery. They're going to have lower yield. So that high cost of battery is not going to translate into a low-end vehicle. They're going to use that high-end battery for higher-end vehicles like Roadster, like Plaid Model S and Plaid Model X, and like Semi. And I should note here, Limiting Factor thinks they'll be using regular nickel cobalt aluminum in the Semi. I disagree with him. I think they're going to be using the advanced battery pack batteries in Semi because every kilogram matters. Getting the battery pack, getting the most energy out of the lightest weight is very important for the purpose of bringing cargo. So, and Tesla Semi is an expensive vehicle, especially the early ones will be expensive. So it's reasonable to use the high-cost battery and the high-cost vehicle. Now, as they improve the advanced battery pack manufacturing and they're able to increase the yield and then they produce more batteries and they're able to lower the cost per battery, we can expect the advanced battery pack to spread to other vehicles. Maybe it'll go into a performance Model 3. Maybe it'll go into lesser vehicles, especially as you get further down the road. So now we get to the fun part. Let's talk about some vehicles that we can see coming in the near future and then on further down the road. How about the 2022 Model 3 with a lithium iron phosphate battery? You heard Elon talking about approaching 300 miles of range. So let's project 280 miles of range for the Model 3 with lithium iron phosphate battery pack. And because of improved manufacturing, because of the lower cost of the lithium iron phosphate battery pack, we're talking about a price of $29,990, under $30,000 for a Tesla Model 3. Consider the 2022 Model 3 with an improved nickel cobalt aluminum battery pack, reaching 350 miles of range for just under $40,000. And then imagine the performance edition of the 2022 Model 3 with the advanced battery pack. Now you're looking at 450 miles of range, a 0 to 60 time of 2.9 seconds because the advanced battery pack will be able to have a higher discharge rate, means it can use more energy quicker, and a price of just under $50,000 for an amazing sporty vehicle. Moving on to the Model Y, 2022 Model Y with lithium iron phosphate battery pack should be able to achieve 270 miles of range. It's a little heavier than a Model 3, so it won't be quite as far, but that vehicle under $32,000. These vehicles are going to be highly competitive with existing ICE vehicles, making it easier for Tesla to convert more people and help accelerate the transition to sustainable energy. The 2022 Model Y with nickel cobalt aluminum in the long range version should achieve 340 miles of range for a price of just under $43,000. And then you get your performance Model Y with the advanced battery pack, 425 miles of range, 0 to 60 in just over 3 seconds, and just under $55,000 for a high-performance, reasonable SUV. This is one of the big deals. Imagine the 2022 Model S using lithium iron phosphate battery pack. Because of cell to pack, because of other improvements, they're able to achieve a 350-mile range with a Model S lithium iron phosphate. And because of the low cost of the battery pack and the other improvements, they get the price down to under $60,000. This is huge. This is massive competition for so many mid-level luxury vehicles. This is blowing people away. And I think this is going to happen. Now consider the improved Model S long range with the improved nickel cobalt aluminum battery pack, and you're looking at a 450-mile range and a price under $70,000. Keep in mind that the current price is $75,000, so this is a drop of $5,000 in price and an increase of 50 miles in range. Next up, and I think this is something that Elon is going to announce at Battery Day, is the 2021 Model S Plaid. This is going to have an early version of the advanced battery pack. They won't be able to make it in volume, so these will be restricted. You won't be able to buy that many of them, but I'm projecting a price of just under $120,000 and a 0 to 60 time of 2.1 seconds. That compares to 2.3 seconds for the current Raven Performance Model S. And the price is higher because the battery pack won't be that inexpensive yet because they won't be able to produce it in volume. They won't have the economies of scale yet. Next up, it looks like Cybertruck will be delivered in 2021. We can expect the single motor Cybertruck with lithium iron phosphate pack for just under $40,000. The dual motor, I think there's going to be 2 versions of the dual motor. I think there will be another lithium iron phosphate version at the dual motor that will get 400 miles of range. The base model single motor will get 300 miles of range. And then there will be a nickel cobalt aluminum option for the dual motor that will be able to get close to 500 miles of range, maybe 500 miles of range or more, and that would cost more. The dual motor with lithium iron phosphate should be just under $50,000. With nickel cobalt aluminum, I think we're probably talking closer to $60,000 with that extra range. And then the tri-motor with the advanced battery pack, he said it would be 500 miles of range. I think it's going to be 550 miles of range. And that's going to be $70,000, just under $70,000. Now let's go further. Let's look at 2025 when Tesla is able to deliver the 400 watt-hour per kilogram battery cells in volume with cell to pack and everything else. And we're looking at a 2025 Model 3 with that advanced battery pack achieving 400 miles of range. And because they're now producing in such volume, they're able to get the price down to $20,000, just under $20,000. Think about that. A Model 3 for just under $20,000. This is going to happen by 2025. You're going to have massive manufacturing improvements, probably going to have whole frame casting. A lot of other features are going to be improved. They keep improving the technology. And then that getting to scale on this advanced battery pack is going to lower that cost. And the performance model of the 2025 Model 3 should achieve 520 miles of range, 0 to 60 in 2.5 seconds, and a price of just under $35,000. It's going to be amazing. That's a little optimistic. I think it might be closer to $40,000, but 2025 is a long ways away. All the improvements they're making, I think we're going to see this happen. Look at the 2025 Model Y with the advanced battery pack, achieving a 400-mile range and a price under $25,000. This is going to shred the competition. ICE is going to die. This is the death blow. If it's not already dead by 2025 with mass production of the advanced battery pack, the ICE companies, the ICE car companies are dead. They're shot. Moving up to the Model S in 2025, the long-range version with the advanced battery pack could be able to achieve a 600-mile range for under $60,000. You're talking about a luxury vehicle under $60,000 with a 600-mile range. Going to be amazing. And how about this? The 2025 Cybertruck, dual motor all-wheel drive with the advanced battery pack, achieving 500 miles of range for under $35,000. This value proposition is going to crush the entire pickup truck market. Tesla is going to sell every vehicle they make. And looking forward to some concept vehicles that I think we're going to see by 2025. In 2025, we're going to see a Tesla compact. Maybe it's going to be the China design, maybe it's going to be the Berlin design, maybe there'll be one of each. But I think we're looking at a compact vehicle smaller than the Model 3 with a 300-mile range and a price of under $15,000. 4 seats, very comfortable, very efficient, very safe for under $15,000. It's going to blow the market away. And one of my favorite concepts, the Cybervan. 2025, we'll see a Cybervan with an advanced battery pack achieving 600 miles of range for $34,990. And this is going to be the mass transit for the world. And be able to squeeze 20 or more people in there. The cost per mile for riding in this thing is going to get down to a penny a mile. You're going to be able to travel 500 miles for $5. 500 miles for $5. Amazing. One of my favorite ideas is the pod car. I see a single passenger robo-taxi with a 200-mile range for under $5,000. Full frame casting, very, very low cost to make this thing because there's not a lot to it. 4 small wheels, no steering wheel. This is a robo-taxi only. It's 1 passenger, not a lot of space. It's going to be tiny. It's going to be very, very efficient. It's going to have, full self-driving, full autonomy. And being able to make this for $5,000 translates to robo-taxi rides being a nickel a mile. Another product that Tesla fans don't talk about much is Powerwall and Powerpack and Megapack. I'm not getting to Megapack in this one, but figure a Powerwall with lithium iron phosphate achieving 15 kilowatt hours for only $4,500. The current Powerwall is about 13 kilowatt hours for $6,000. You're going to get the cost of the Powerwall down, and you're going to get the power, the kilowatt hours up. So you'll be able to do more with less money for Powerwall. And then Powerpack, currently around 220, 230 kilowatt hours. With lithium iron phosphate, they'll be able to achieve 250 kilowatt hours for $150,000 each, lowering the price by over $20,000. One other thing that we're going to see at Battery Day is Elon is going to talk about the Berlin Model Y redesign. He mentioned it in an interview recently.
There's a bunch of innovative stuff that we'll be doing here that we'll tell you about in the future. It's not just a copy of the Model Y. It's actually a radical redesign of the core technology of building a car. And some of this, when I do Battery Day later in September, I'll talk about what we're going to be doing here in Berlin. But it'll be the first time that there's going to be a transformation in the core structural design of the vehicle. It's quite a big thing.
He's going to talk about how they're going to be making the Model Y differently, the manufacturing improvements, and we've seen that they've got 8 casting machines that they're going to be able to produce in huge volume, and we're expecting, and we don't know what else. He talked about advanced body engineering. There's a whole bunch of things going on. This is one of those wild cards. We don't know exactly what's going to happen. I think we're going to see the cost of making the Model Y is going to go radically down, and the ability to produce it in volume is going to go radically up. Combine that with the availability of lithium iron phosphate at the low end and the advanced battery pack at the high end, and we're going to see Tesla blow out the vehicle market in the United States, Europe, and Asia, and beyond. One other thing, if you think I'm being optimistic about the future, check out what Scylla Nanotechnology says. Scylla is headed up by a former Tesla battery guy. They predict a future of $50 per kilowatt hour lithium-ion battery cells capable of fast charging, 10,000 or more cycles, easily 1,000,000 miles, and a 30-year calendar life. This is where we're heading. This is going to radically change the world. We're going to head to 2 terawatt hours per year of battery production and more. Hey, thanks for watching this video. If you like this video, check out some others, and I got more coming. Please subscribe to see what else is coming. Please tell your friends. Check out the merch below. Please also support me on Patreon, where you'll get advance notice of video content. Thanks very much for watching.